All right, welcome back to ABA exam review and the continuation of our BCBA practice exam series, where we're going through another set of questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please subscribe and like. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials, including our combo pack. When you pass your exam, please let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. Let's get going. You, a behavior analyst, want to use modeling to teach your client to interact socially with his peers his age. You take the client to a trampoline park and engage in several variations of social interaction and activity while the client watches. What should you be looking for to see if your client is imitating successfully? So we have an imitation question. And when we're talking about imitation on the exam, you want to think in terms of pure imitation, true imitation. And true imitation means that the imitation happens immediately after the model. So the model occurs, and then there is imitation. Now, you can have planned modeling, you can have unplanned modeling. Either way, imitation must occur immediately after. So if you're modeling social interaction with peers, you're at a trampoline park, and you're modeling the interactions while the client watches. What do you want to check for to make sure this is imitation? A, take the client again next week and see if they engage socially. Well, it'd be great if they did, but that's not going to be imitation because it's happening a week later. B, check and see if the client is engaging socially in the moment following modeling. Yes, this is what we're looking for. We're looking to see that the imitation is occurring as a result, immediate result of the model. B, ask the client's school if they are engaging socially. Well, we're looking for the model, or we're looking for the imitation in the moment at that trampoline park. D, analyze the following 3 weeks of social interaction data. Maybe the data is good. Maybe they go to school, they learned, but the question wants to make sure that imitation is occurring. And to check for imitation, we have to see that it's happening in the moment following the model. A behavior analyst is supervising a client and notices the client's challenging behavior has started to increase. The behavior analyst decides to implement an intrusive punishment procedure without first asking the client's mom. Following day, the behavior technician tells the analyst that the client is in extreme emotional distress. What is now at risk for the analyst? So as the analyst, your primary role essentially is to design these treatments and make sure they're ethical, safe, and effective. Whenever you make a major change, you always want to get consent from the stakeholders. In this case, you have a client who has challenging behavior. And so, or a behavior analyst, I should say, has a client with challenging behavior, and they're going to implement an intrusive punishment procedure. Now, we always want to check to make sure changes are okay, but especially with punishment, you always need consent for punishment because of all the many ethical issues that come along with it. You didn't ask for the behavior analyst, did not get that consent. And then the following day, there's extreme emotional distress. So what's the problem? What is the behavior analyst putting at risk by not getting consent to use an intrusive punishment procedure? A, the analyst may face repercussions from the certification board. Sure, if the client was harmed and they are reported to the board, there are possible repercussions to face for these ethical violations. B, the analyst may harm ABA as a profession. Yes, part of the task list is we don't want to harm our profession. And by using intense punishment irresponsibly or without consent, which leads to things like emotional distress, that can make ABA as the profession look bad. And C, the analyst may have damaged the relationship between the technician and the client. You always want to think about this aspect. Your technician, who is directly implementing your plan, is there all the time. It's very important that the technician and the client have a good relationship. If you're using a lot of punishment and it's hurting that relationship, you're probably hurting the client in the process. And so really, if this behavior technician has used this intrusive punishment procedure, they've put themselves at risk, the repercussions from the board. They put the profession at risk by harming the reputation of ABA, and they put the technician at risk by ruining that relationship. So what have they put at risk? D, all the above. Notice how we read each answer choice. A was correct, but you never stop at A. You want to read every single answer choice every single time. Whenever his classroom becomes too loud, Tom will cover his ears and start to cry. When Tom covers his ears and cries, his teachers let him sit outside in the hall for 5 to 10 minutes to get away from the noise. Tom is always covering his ears and crying in the classroom. What is the most likely reason for this? Very straightforward consequence question. What are we looking for? We're looking for, well, why is Tom always covering his ears and crying in the classroom? And one, that's an immediate giveaway that this is reinforcement or punishment. It's going to be reinforcement, right? Because when the classroom is too loud, Tom covers his ears and starts to cry, and he always does this. So whatever the consequence is at the very least maintaining this behavior, if not increasing it. Now, what's the consequence? Well, when Tom covers his ears and cries, he goes outside in the hall to get away from the noise. He's escaping the noise. Escape avoidance is most often linked to negative reinforcement. By covering his ears and starting to cry, Tom gets to escape and remove that noise. The consequence is the noise is gone, or you could say Tom is out the classroom, but we know at least he escapes the noise. As a result, he continues that behavior. So Tom is being reinforced through escape, which means the consequence is likely what? A, positive reinforcement. Well, we know it's reinforcement. We've established that, but it isn't positive because Tom is getting removed. There's removal. Tom is escaping. Most likely reason is B, negative reinforcement. And we know it's not C and D because it isn't punishment. The behavior is continuing. Very straightforward consequence question. When you get easy questions on the exam, because the exam has a lot of questions, there will be some easy ones. Don't overthink it. Trust your preparation, answer it, and let's move to the next one. Tom is assigned to a client that comes from a cultural background that is significantly different from Tom's own background. Client's life is modeled around their cultures, practices, and values. Tom wants to ensure the best service possible for the client. What should Tom do? In practice, we need to be culturally sensitive, culturally receptive, open to different cultures, and have to take those cultures into account in our practice. As analysts, we have our own cultures and backgrounds, and we can't push our cultures and backgrounds on others, even if it's on accident through our treatments. So in this case, we have a situation where Tom has a client whose background is very different from his, and that client's life is modeled around that culture. Tom has to take that into account when designing the treatment. So what should Tom do? A, demonstrate cultural competence by using what he knows about the client's culture in his treatment planning. Now, it's one way to do it, right? He can go ahead and just whatever he knows about that culture, that's what I'm going to use. A is not a bad answer, but is there a better way for Tom to treat his client, considering how different this background is from his? B, demonstrate cultural humility by seeking out information about the client's culture. Yes, that's what Tom should do. Just because Tom uses what he knows about the client's culture, what does Tom know? How much does Tom know? We don't know. The better way is, hey, let's seek out information about the client's culture. Let me learn about this culture. And then I can design my treatments. That's going to give me the best service possible. Maybe just using what I know on the time could give good service. But if I seek out new information about the client's culture, that's going to give me the best service. A and B are both pretty good answers. B is just stronger. B is just the better answer. C, demonstrate his professional expertise by prioritizing evidence-based practices over cultural values. Now be careful here. We want to use evidence-based practices. We want to be data-driven. We cannot neglect culture. We cannot neglect beliefs. So prioritizing evidence-based practices means no matter what, we're picking the evidence-based practice over the cultural value. When a lot of times there are more than one practice we can use when we take into account culture. And then D, demonstrate cultural neutrality by avoiding incorporating too much of any culture into his treatment planning. Well, if the family centers their whole life around that culture, maybe they want that culture in his treatment planning. It's not for Tom to decide. That's for the family to decide, for the client to decide. So Tom can't make that assumption that I should remain neutral. If that client's life is built around that culture and his family wants service modeled after the culture, Tom should do that. So if Tom has a situation, background significantly different, what should he do? Demonstrate cultural humility by seeking out information about the client's culture. Larry is working with a client who will yell loudly whenever they want access to an item. Larry teaches the client the phrase, "Can I have that, please?" Larry only reinforces the client when they use that phrase. What is Larry most likely using? All right, another pretty straightforward question. Differential reinforcement question here. Let's think about what kind of differential reinforcement are we using? And in a differential reinforcement question, ask yourself first, am I teaching a replacement behavior? Because if you are, you know it must be alternative or incompatible. Because our other styles, the others, the lower rates, the higher rates, don't teach replacements. We know Larry has a client, yells loudly. Larry teaches the new behavior. Can I have that, please? We're teaching a replacement. We know it's got to be alternative or incompatible. Now, he only reinforces the client when they use that phrase. Can that client yell and use that phrase at the same time? They absolutely can. This means this is not incompatible. It's just alternative. So Larry is using a differential reinforcement of alternative behavior. I'm only going to reinforce when you use that phrase, but it is possible to yell loudly and use that phrase. B, differential reinforcement of other behavior, doesn't teach a replacement and reinforces in the absence, which is not what we're doing here. Differential reinforcement of incompatible does teach a replacement, but the replacement here is not incompatible with the old behavior. And D, differential reinforcement of lower rates, where we're setting a lower criterion or setting a criterion and trying to get that behavior below it. We're trying to decrease an already present behavior. What we're trying to do here is teach this new behavior. And we're trying to teach this alternative behavior. So Larry is most likely using A, differential reinforcement of alternative behavior. Thanks so much for watching. Check out behavioranalyststudy.com for all of our study materials. Please like and subscribe. When you pass your exam, let us know so we can include you in the Sunday shout out. Work hard, study hard. See you soon.